Hello, everybody, and welcome to Commodity Culture, where our goal is to make you a better investor in the commodity space. My name is Jesse Day. Before we dive in, as always, standard disclaimer, nothing here is investment advice. Do your own due diligence. We bring you the information. You do your own research. And today's guest is a best-selling author, world-renowned speculator, and libertarian philosopher. He is the founder of Casey Research and Doug Casey's International Man, someone I've wanted to have on the show for quite some time, so I'm very excited to welcome Doug Casey to the program.
Thanks, Chelsea. I appreciate it.
And I appreciate having you here. I want to start off with a very broad question. You can feel free to take it in whatever direction you like, and that is when we're looking across the realms of financial markets, the global economy, politics, and geopolitics, what are the main themes and trends you're focused on right now that you think more investors should be paying attention to?
The way I see it, we've entered into something that I call the Greater Depression, period of time when most people's standard of living is going to drop significantly. Of course, that's been true for the last 50 years. The standard of living, in many ways, has been going down significantly, but it's been buttressed by borrowing, which is living off of capital other people have saved in the past and mortgaging your further production in the future. It's ameliorated that trend a little bit, and by increases in technology and so forth. But anyway, I think we're in for some very rough times. Let me put it that way. That's one thing. I think that we have a high likelihood of experiencing real chaos in a number of areas, certainly in the political realm here in the United States. And I don't think it's going to be very mellow where you are in Canada either. So that's the second thing. Third thing is I could point out that relative to other areas of where you can put your capital, stocks, bonds, real estate, commodities are very, very cheap right now. And I think they've got a lot of upside potential for reasons that we could talk about. So, yeah, that's kind of a general overview, if you wish.
Fantastic. Let's dive into commodities, starting with gold. I am actually in Amsterdam, not Canada. I live in Novi Sad, Serbia. I'm just visiting Amsterdam right now. It's funny you did an interview with Jay Martin on the VRIC channel, which I also host shows there. And I'm the one who typed in the live chat asking you about the Balkans, because you were talking about like diversification of where to go. And I'm located in Serbia. I fled Canada in October
That's interesting
2021.
because I think right now, as we speak, my friends uh, Jeff Berwick, and he's got a conference there on the Serbo-Croatian border called Anarchotopia.
Oh, really? I was not aware of that. I'm gonna have to let's talk about that after we finish the recording. I'd love to get some information, but for the moment, I'd like to get your thoughts on the gold sector, and I want to quote something you wrote on International Man. Three emotions typically move the gold price: prudence, fear, and greed. At the moment, only prudence is dominant and certainly not greed or even fear, even though there's plenty to be afraid about. Could you walk us through how you see fear and greed eventually coming into play and then thus pushing the gold price higher?
Since 1971, certainly, when the U.S. cut all links, all remaining links with gold, when Nixon devalued the dollar in August of 1971, we've been engaged in the U.S. and the whole world in very radical inflation. Actually, this started much earlier. It started in the 1930s when Roosevelt cut links with the dollar. I mean, a lot of people don't realize that before 1933, people walked around with gold coins in their pocket. The dollar was exchangeable by the central bank at a fixed rate. You could change your gold for $20 per ounce. So I'm a believer that gold is money. You can use you can use lots of things as money. You can use seashells. During World War II in prison camps, they used cigarettes as money. But for lots of reasons, gold has always been, of all the 92 naturally occurring elements, the best money. And at this point, in a world that's absolutely overloaded with debt, courtesy of the central banks of the world, and they're redoubling the amount of debt as we speak, uh, there's going to be a collapse of the currency systems. And gold, which is $2,500 an ounce as we speak, uh, unfortunately has the potential to go a lot higher. I've been long gold for decades and never sold an ounce. I've used it as a savings vehicle, sometimes as a speculating vehicle to speculate with, but mainly as just a savings vehicle, and it's treated me very well.
Hey guys, just a quick break to hear from today's sponsor, ARC Silver Gold Osmium. They offer personalized service and competitive prices with no minimum purchase for silver, gold, platinum, or osmium. Here's just some of the comments left on this YouTube channel about ARC SGO and owner Ian Everard. Have bought from ARC, good source and price. I cannot say enough good about Ian and his company. He is the most honest individual I could find in order to buy precious metals. If you are looking to buy precious metals, I recommend Ian at ARC Silver. He is a straight shooter. So go to arcsgo.com and contact Ian Everard today at 307-264-9441 or by email at ian@arcsgo.com, and make sure to tell him that Commodity Culture sent you. And how do you view silver at the moment versus gold? I've spoken to some people who say that its monetary use has now fallen off dramatically. It is viewed primarily as an industrial commodity. Others take the complete other side of that argument and point to silver's long track record as money and still see it as such. Obviously, we haven't seen the rise in silver relative to the rise in gold, although, as a lot of people point out, historically in precious metals bull markets, silver can tend to lag and then outperform later on in the cycle. What are your thoughts here on silver?
Well, everything you've said is absolutely correct. There are reasons to be bullish on silver, bearish on silver. The fundamentals are this. We don't know exactly, but there's probably about 7 billion ounces of gold above ground that have been mined since the dawn of history. About 7 billion, as best as we can figure. And the amount of gold that's being added by new mining, it varies, but let's say it's about 90 million ounces per year. Silver, first of all, there are very limited above ground supply. All the gold that's ever been mined is still above ground in storage. Silver, all the silver that's ever been mined is used in an industrial way. So that's a big difference. There aren't inventories of silver. Whereas gold is, let's say we have 90 million new ounces per year in silver, it's about 1 billion new ounces per year. That's another difference. It's a much more volatile commodity to start with because it's a much smaller market. The current value is much smaller. Right now, let's say silver is about $30 an ounce. Historically, and I'm sure many people have told you this before, you're well aware of it, silver has always been about 17 or 18 to 1. It was fixed at that price against gold by the US government and fixing the ratio between anything. It's called price controls. It's a bad idea. It never works. So now the ratio between gold and silver at it's something like 80 to 1. So, all right, this is all theory, some miscellaneous facts. What do I think about silver? I think when there's panic in the air uh, and people stop buying gold and silver out of prudence, which is the main reason people that buy it have been buying it, and they buy it out of fear, A dollar put into the silver market will have a vastly bigger effect than a dollar put into the gold market for the reasons that I've detailed. And you could see silver at $200 an ounce. In fact, in real terms, the past high of silver, it's hit $50 an ounce twice in the past. Uh, it could go to $200 easily.
And how do you view the gold and silver mining sectors at the moment? A lot of people are pointing, especially when it comes to gold, how undervalued many of the equities are relative to the price of the metal itself. Obviously, the mining sector is fraught with peril as an investor. Most people should just buy an ETF. But how do you view those sectors, both gold and silver mining? Obviously, silver much smaller, very few pure play silver miners out there. Is there any opportunity there right now? And how do you personally approach determining if one of these companies is worth investing in or not?
You can't, or at least you shouldn't, invest in mining stocks. That's why Warren Buffett famously never puts money into mining stocks. You can speculate in mining stocks, and that's what I do. Investing should be defined as placing a dollar someplace where it can reasonably be expected to grow because you're producing new wealth with that dollar. It's like planting a seed of corn is investing. But speculating is different. It's taking advantage of distortions in the market, taking advantage of things that you know that the market or other people don't know. So speculating and investing are two different things. And mining itself is a crappy business. It's a 19th century choo-choo train business. Kids don't want to go into it anymore for obvious reasons. Who wants to play around with big yellow trucks in the dirt? I mean, when you could move bits and bytes on your computer. And mining's got all kinds of problems. It's a really crappy business as a business. And I can talk about why it's a crappy business. And really only an idiot gets involved in mining today. I speak as somebody who's been involved in mining for most of my adult life. So silver, getting back to silver, you're right. There are very few pure silver mines in the world today. Most silver is a byproduct of gold mines, copper mines. Oftentimes silver is a byproduct of lead mines, zinc mines. So there are few actual silver mines out there. So what can I say? There are a couple thousand, well, more actually, small precious metals mines that are listed in Canada, Australia, the UK, the US, basically those four countries. And most of them are crappy businesses. Very few of them are silver mines. I own a couple of speculations. Well, anyway, look, the thing with these junior mining stocks is that in the past, individual stocks have gone not just 10 to 1, but 100 to 1, even 1,000 to 1 not over the course of a lifetime, but over the course of a 3 or 4 or 5 year cycle. So that's why people put money in them, because they're so volatile. It's such a teeny weeny portion of the market that institutions don't invest in mining stocks, well, except for the big ones like BHP and things like that. Maybe Newmont, which is the biggest gold miner, Agnico Eagle. But once you get below these big companies, they're too small for major institutions to invest in. Not only that, but people that manage money today don't believe in gold or silver for that matter. They think gold's a pet rock. So that and the public has no interest in it. The public mostly invests these days in ETFs, and you call your broker and you tell them you want to put money in a gold stock, I promise I'll try to talk you out of it to start with. So these mining stocks are actually, they're crappy as a general rule, but they're very, very cheap right now, which is why I own a lot of them, frankly. And I expect in the few years to come that I'll see 10 to 1 on the portfolio as a whole, and I'll have a few companies that go 100 to 1. I personally owned a stock that went 1,000 to 1 in the past, personally. So it does happen.
Very interesting thoughts. I want to circle back to what you were talking about in the opening of the interview when you discussed that you think things are going to get bad. Now, when we look at that from both and I assume you mean like economically as well as geopolitically. I had Martin Armstrong on the show not too long ago. His view is what many would consider to be pretty extreme. But he seems to have a lot of knowledge to back it up, is that he believes that the US is going to break up into different countries. He thinks the EU is going to dissolve over the course of the next decade. And he sees civil wars rising. He sees global conflict rising before eventually on the other side of it, we get kind of a new era. He specifically named the year 2032, I believe, as when that was going to happen. I'm wondering what your thoughts are when we look globally at the world today with the mounting debt, the growing conflict that doesn't seem to be abating anytime soon, both Russia, Ukraine, as well as in the Middle East. And of course, we've got civil war in South Sudan. We've got Haiti. We've got Myanmar. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on. A lot of that's exacerbated by the fact that we have social media now, so we're getting 24/7 updates. The world's always been in conflict, but we just get to see it live now. How do you think all of this comes together, and how bad could it get? What are the main things that have you concerned right now?
I don't have a magic 8 ball, so I can't give you the exact date when things are really going to start falling apart. But I've been saying for years that the EU is a totally artificial and destructive construct, and it will fall apart. It started out as a customs union for iron and coal to make the transfer of those commodities easier and cheaper. Okay, good idea. And if the EU was nothing but a vehicle to ease the travel of people across borders within that union and reduce duties within that union, fine, wonderful. But it's actually become an extra layer of government with an unbelievable number of regulations. Yes, of course, it's going to fall apart. In fact, most of the countries in the world are going to fall apart. Every country in Africa is an artificial construct put together in the boardrooms of Europe with no consideration whatsoever for the local people, their languages, their customs, their tribes. So most of these countries are going to blow up and fall apart. Well, Sudan has already broken up into 2 countries. This should break up into several more. This is true of the Congo, Nigeria, every country in Africa, every country in the Middle East. Iraq isn't a real country. So yeah, we're going to see a lot of this in the future, political chaos. And actually, politics is at the root of all the problems that we have. Um, Politics is about coercion. It's like Mao Tse-tung said, the power of government comes out of the barrel of a gun. And since just before World War One, before then, governments, states around the world generally took 5, maybe 10% of the GDP of their country to maintain themselves and to maintain the people in government in the manner to which they like to be accustomed. The US was more like 5% before 1913. It was just excise taxes and import duties. That's it. Now, The US government takes on the order of 35, 40%. A lot of governments take 50, 60, 70%. So the whole world is built upon uh, the artificial construct of the state. Uh, it's all going to fall apart. Yeah, there's no question about that in my mind. They've created tremendous distortions and misallocations of capital, and they'll be liquidated. It's happening now, actually.
Very interesting. I know you're also a big believer in having global diversification in terms of different places you can go. In today's era of censorship, government overreach being on the rise in many nations, as I mentioned, I fled Canada which is kind of a funny thing to say in 2021. I was going to be locked in my own country for not taking their desired medical injection, and so I chose to leave. Do you think it's more important than ever these days, given everything you just laid out, to have additional locations that you can go to if things get bad in your country of residence? And do you think it's important to have a location outside of Western nations as well? As you mentioned, you've got residences in Panama and in Argentina too. How important is being diversified like that today?
I think it's critical because it's important to be diversified financially among different asset classes. Okay, that's understood. But a far bigger danger is to be diversified politically, because your big danger is not just the markets, and they're dangerous enough, but it's governments and what their laws and the people in the governments will do to you. So it's critical that you have capital uh, outside of your native country, maybe in two, not just two, but maybe three other countries. The ideal thing is to have several flags. Your residence is one place, your business is another place, your passport is a third place. This is critical today. Uh, and I think people should consider this and act now, because we're moving into a time when we're going to have serious foreign exchange controls all across the world. Because with the money supply in countries being manipulated by their central banks, generally expanded radically, things get out of control, and governments never control themselves. They control their subjects. And one of the ways they do this is with foreign exchange controls, where they say, okay, you can no longer ship money out of the country. That's unpatriotic. So now you're trapped like a lobster in a trap if you don't already have your money abroad. Uh, so yeah, it's something that few people do, or perhaps it's because few people can do it. Most people don't have the assets. Shame on them if they don't to do that. But if you do have the assets, yes, you should diversify politically as well as financially today.
Very well said. I want to talk about the Orwellian crackdown on free speech happening these days. We've seen the UK police throw people in jail for social media posts, in addition to threatening people outside of the UK, which is pretty
Oh, it's
funny,
criminal.
but a little bit scary.
Shocking.
Yeah,
It's actually like that wonderful movie V for Vendetta,
yeah.
which came about 20 years ago. Yes, life is imitating art. Yeah, I'm sorry I cut you off, but yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to throw a few more examples out there. The commissioner from the EU sending an open letter to Elon Musk, threatening him if he doesn't censor his interview with Trump. The Telegram CEO arrested in France. Brazil banning X, not only banning it, but warning their citizens, we will fine you. It's around 9,000 US dollars per day if you use a VPN to access X, which is an insane amount of money to pay. How did we get here? Will it get worse? And in the end, will free speech eventually prevail?
Well, I'd like to believe that free speech will eventually prevail, but this is happening all over the world, as you pointed out. I mean, Germany is turning into, in addition to the countries you mentioned, one of the least free countries in the world. Um, Yeah, these states are growing like cancers all over the world today. So that, well, once again, this is why you should diversify politically in case things get totally out of control. I mean, in 1917, things were rough in Russia because of World War One. But after Lenin took over and then Stalin, if you weren't out of Russia, you were in a world of trouble. And in 1933, uh, you could see what was going on with Hitler. But after 1933, it got tougher. If you weren't out of Germany, you were screwed. Same thing in Vietnam, 1975. Uh, I can give you dozens of Cuba, 1959, China, 1947. Uh, this is happening all over the world today. And even now in Canada, which is turning into a police state, and the culture of Canada is being changed, I'd say as fast as that of any country in the world today. Uh, there's 40 million people in Canada. It gets about 1.5 million immigrants per year. Almost all of them are from the third world. Most of them are actually feral people. And in a few more years, Canada is not going to look like the Canada that we know. It'll look more like a slum of Delhi, perhaps. Something like that. The same thing is happening in the US. US is a bigger country with the mass migration across the southern border. I have no problem, incidentally, with people moving from one country to another. Uh, I think it's a great idea in many ways because the best people generally immigrate and go places where there's more freedom, more opportunity. But in the United States, the migrants are being subsidized. You come to the US and you get free money, you get a free place to live, you get free medical. If you get any kids, although most of the migrants are young military age males, which is kind of disturbing. So these people are actually being encouraged and subsidized. It's not like immigration was to the US or Canada in the 19th century, where, yeah, you could come, no problem. But we would give you nothing. You'd have to make your own way. So that drew the best and the brightest opportunity seekers as appeals to people that are expecting a cushion when they come to the country and freebies, drawing exactly the wrong kind of people. Yeah, so big trouble this way comes. And the trend is still accelerating all over the world, actually.
Yes, absolutely, and agree that it's absolutely key to have other places to go. I wonder if there's a correlation between the conflicts that are accelerating around the world today and the massive debt carried by the US and other governments. Is there a connection there? Because I've spoken to some people, Tom Luongo, one of them, who believes that the war is kind of a cover, a way to distract everybody for an eventual reset of the monetary system and the introduction of a CBDC. That's his theory. There's many more out there. But is there some connection in your mind between conflict, and especially the US getting involved in all these conflicts around the world, and the debt burden carried by these governments?
Over 100 years ago, it was said by Rudolf Stirner, war is the health of the state. It's always been the major occupation of government and people that are in it. And we're building up to more and more of this type of thing. But the problem with governments owing money, it's not just that their tax burden's immense. It's not just that they're printing up money in such amounts that it's losing value rapidly, but the amount of debt in the world, both on the part of governments, if they're going to pay their debt, that ensures taxes are going to go even higher in the future to service their debt. And individuals in the US, the average person is grossly indebted. He owes student loan debt. He owes credit card debt, automobile debt, mortgage debt. He's got no flexibility whatsoever. He, he's like tied down like a plant, like a medieval serf at this point. So actually, it's very hard when you're a serf to move to a different place. You're forcibly married to it. And the average American, the average Canadian is tied down with all this debt. And in the future, more and more, he's going to be tied down with more laws and regulations. This is very bad because it used to be Western civilization represented freedom and individuality and the ability to move. This is all being washed away for many different reasons today. So we're at a stage where I think the French phrase sauve qui peut, let he who can save himself, uh, is something people should keep in the back of their mind. We're on a ship that's sinking, and you should move toward the lifeboat early. Most people don't understand the situation, but hopefully the people listening to your show do.
Yeah, absolutely. So I wanted to end on how people can protect themselves from these scenarios which you've outlined. Obviously, being able to diversify in terms of different residences, different jurisdictions to go to in case something goes down, owning different properties in different locations, obviously something that's very key, but something that's out of reach for a lot of people. So how do you feel about preparing for potential chaos to come? Do you believe that having a food supply is important, growing your own food, perhaps something like that, having gold and silver bullion outside, money outside of the financial system is important? How can your average person out there who maybe isn't able to relocate prepare themselves for potential political chaos or conflict?
For the average guy that does not have a lot of capital today, here's what he's got to do. He's got to significantly cut back his standard of living now while
Yes.
he's still in control, as opposed to waiting until things get really wild and woolly and it's out of control and your standard of living will be cut back for you. So cut back your standard of living as much as you possibly can and save capital. Now, the question is, what do you do with that capital? If you leave it with dollars, they're going to be inflated out of existence right now. Forget about the government numbers. I don't trust US government numbers much more than I trust those from a South American country, frankly. Uh, so I suggest that with that money you save from cutting back, you really should learn to speculate. Most people confuse that with gambling and get blown up as a result. Investing is getting harder and harder in a highly regulated, highly taxed, highly inflationary environment. So you should learn how to speculate, but along the way, I suggest you buy physical gold and physical silver with the money that you're saving from cutting back your standard of living now. That's it in a nutshell for the average guy.
Yeah, that's very well
And
put. Yeah.
learn something about economic theory. And I don't mean the bullshit that they teach you in college. That's Keynesian economics. In fact, it's even Marxist economics today, because it's most colleges, which it's a huge mistake to go to college today. I mean, it's 4 years misallocation of time at best and wastage of money. You can use those 4 years much more productively elsewhere. So there's all kinds of things that you can and should do, but will anybody do them? I don't know.
Yeah, no, that's very well said. And the cutting back on living expenses, living below your means is like the number one piece of investment guidance I give people, but I'm no expert. I'm on a show where I speak to experts such as yourself, but occasionally I get friends, family members, etc., asking me, "Hey, you do this show about investing. What should I do?" And my thing is like, cut back on your living expenses first. That's the first thing. Live below your means if you don't have a lot of capital.
If you want to progress in life, you have to produce more than you consume. That's obvious. Any squirrel knows that. To put away nuts for the winter, produce more than you consume and save the difference. And now the question is, well, how do I save it? And we addressed that briefly now, but most people don't. They jam up their credit cards. They're in debt for everything. And frankly, they're going to get what they deserve, which is serfdom.
Yes. Well, Doug, this has been a fantastic conversation. Very much appreciate you coming on the show. Could you tell us about Doug Casey's International Man? Anywhere else you want to direct people online where they can see more of your work?
Internationalman.com is a daily blog that I write for, and along with several other guys that are absolutely great. So everybody should subscribe to internationalman.com. Number one. Number two, I do a podcast with Matt Smith on YouTube, among other places, called Doug Casey's Take. I think people would find that most interesting. Third, I have a series of novels that I've written the first three, or more may be on the way, we'll find out. Speculator, Drug Lord, and Assassin, where we're charting our hero as he advances through stranger and stranger things in life and engages in occupations that are highly politically incorrect. But he's a good guy.
That's very interesting. I'm going to put links to all of that in the description below. Thank you so much, Doug, for coming on and sharing your knowledge with the audience.
My pleasure, Jesse. We'll do it again, perhaps someday.
And thank you for joining us today. As a reminder, this episode is brought to you by ARC Silver Gold Osmium. For all your precious metals needs, head to arcsgo.com and contact owner Ian Everard today at 307-264-9441 or by email at ian@arcsgo.com, and make sure to tell him that Commodity Culture sent you. And I'll see you guys in the next episode. Commodity Culture is a series on commodities and natural resources. If you would like to see more, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification so you're always up to date with the latest episodes.